She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Benita's body moved about calmly, completely detached from the head it held in its hands. Her hair was being braided with a speed and precision that seemed almost supernatural. Ego wanted to run, but her feet were rooted to the ground. She had to make sense of what she was seeing. Just as she decided to move back, in the peaceful village of Akani, there lived a woman named Benita. She was known far and wide, not just for her kindness, but for her extraordinary beauty. What made Benita so special wasn't just her sparkling eyes or her radiant smile. It was her hair, her magical, mesmerizing hair that seemed to change with every week, always appearing in a new, perfectly styled fashion. No one could understand how it was possible. Some days it flowed in long, loose curls, cascading down her back like a waterfall of midnight. Other days it was braided into intricate designs that even the most skilled hairdressers in the village could not replicate. Everyone in the village admired Benita's hair. The women wanted to know her secret, and the men were captivated by her beauty. Children would gather around her when she walked by, pointing and whispering excitedly to one another. They would say, "What style will she have next? And how does she do it?" But no one knew. Benita would smile, thank them for their kind words, and continue on her way. Benita's closest friend, Ego, was particularly fascinated. She had known Benita since they were little girls, playing by the riverside and singing songs beneath the baobab trees. Yet even she could not figure out the mystery of Benita's hair. They had shared everything growing up, secrets, stories, and dreams. But this was different. Ego watched her friend closely, trying to catch a glimpse of how she managed to style her hair so flawlessly without anyone's help. But every time she asked, Benita would just laugh and say, "Oh, Ego, it's just a little trick I've learned." But Ego was no fool. She knew there had to be more to the story. How could one person's hair look so perfect every single time? And how could it change so dramatically from week to week? She decided she needed to find out the truth, no matter what. Ego decided to pay Benita more frequent visits, hoping to catch her in the act of styling her hair. One afternoon, she knocked on Benita's door and asked if she could come in. Benita, as always, welcomed her with a warm smile. They sat down, sipping on orange juice, and talked about all sorts of things, stories from their childhood, the latest village gossip, and plans for the upcoming harvest festival. Ego tried to steer the conversation toward hair. "Benita, your hair is looking even more beautiful than usual today," she began. "How do you manage to make it look so perfect? You must teach me your secrets." Benita laughed and brushed off the question, just like she always did. "Oh, Ego, it's nothing special," she replied. "I just have a knack for it. Some of us are born with different gifts, you know." But Ego wasn't satisfied. She watched Benita closely, noting how her friend's eyes flickered with a hint of something. Maybe nervousness. Before she quickly changed the subject. Ego realized that Benita was hiding something, and it wasn't just about vanity. There was a real secret here, and Ego was determined to uncover it. As the days went by, Ego's curiosity only grew stronger. She noticed that Benita never allowed anyone to see her hair being styled. She would disappear for hours, and when she reappeared, her hair would be transformed. And then, one night, Ego heard some of the village elders whispering among themselves. They spoke of shadows and strange things they had seen near Benita's house at night. The more she listened, the more her curiosity turned into a burning need to know the truth. One evening, she decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. She would find out Benita's secret, no matter what it took. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the village prepared for nightfall, Ego made her way to Benita's house. She hid behind a large tree just outside the small yard, her heart pounding in her chest. She waited there, her eyes fixed on the door, hoping to see something that would explain the mystery. For a long time, nothing happened. Suddenly, she noticed a faint movement. The door to Benita's house opened slightly, and a dark figure slipped out. Ego trying to make out who it was. To her shock, it was Benita, but something was different. She was holding something in her hands. As she moved closer to the window, Ego's eyes widened in horror. It looked like a head. Benita was holding her own head, gently combing through the long strands of hair as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Ego stifled a gasp, her hand flying to her mouth. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Benita's body moved about calmly, completely detached from the head it held in its hands. Her hair was being braided with a speed and precision that seemed almost supernatural. Ego wanted to run, but her feet were rooted to the ground. She had to make sense of what she was seeing. Just as she decided to move back, a twig snapped beneath her foot. The sound echoed in the still night air. Benita's head snapped around, still in her hands, the eyes now wide and searching. Ego ducked behind the tree, holding her breath, praying that she hadn't been seen. She peered around the trunk, her heart thudding so loudly she feared it might give her away. She saw Benita slowly look around, her body still holding the head high, the hair half braided and swaying in the night breeze. After what felt like an eternity, Benita turned back toward the window, continuing her strange ritual. Ego knew she needed to leave before she got caught, but now she had more questions than answers. She crept away quietly, her mind racing with confusion and fear. What was Benita doing? And how was she able to remove her own head like that? Ego needed to find out more, but now she had to decide what to do with the terrifying secret she had uncovered. The next day, Ego could barely think of anything else. She replayed the scene in her mind over and over again, trying to make sense of it. How could Benita take off her head and braid her hair like it was nothing? Was it magic? Some kind of dark power? Ego didn't know, but she needed answers. She decided that the only way to find out more was to get even closer to Benita, close enough to ask her outright or catch her in the act again. Ego thought of a plan. She would suggest a sleepover at Benita's house. They hadn't had one since they were much younger, and it wouldn't seem too suspicious if Ego made it sound like she just wanted to spend time with her old friend. But deep down, she hoped that by staying there, she would have a better chance to uncover the full truth about Benita's hair. That afternoon, Ego went to visit Benita, trying to act as normal as possible. "Benita," she called out cheerfully as she approached her friend's house. Benita was sitting outside, brushing her hair in the sunlight. Her hair looked more beautiful than ever today, shimmering like 1,000 dark rivers flowing together. "Ego," Benita replied with a smile. "What brings you by today?" "I was thinking," Ego began, trying to sound casual. "It's been so long since we had a sleepover. Remember when we used to stay up late and tell stories all night? Why don't we do that again, tonight, just like old times?" Benita paused for a moment, her brush stopping in mid-stroke. She glanced at Ego with a slight frown, as if weighing her words carefully. "A sleepover. It has been a long time, but I have a lot to do tonight. Maybe another time." Ego's heart sank, but she quickly forced a smile. "Oh, come on, Benita. You're always so busy. Just one night. Please?" After a moment's hesitation, Benita finally nodded. "All right, Ego, just this once. But promise me you won't stay up too late. I have to get some rest." Ego agreed, trying to hide her excitement and nervousness. She knew that tonight was her chance to uncover the truth once and for all. As night fell, Ego made her way back to Benita's house, carrying a small bag with a blanket and some snacks. She was greeted by Benita, who had prepared a small mat for them in the main room. The evening began pleasantly enough. They laughed, told stories, and reminisced about their childhood. But as the night grew deeper, Ego could see Benita becoming more restless. "I think it's time to sleep, Ego," Benita said finally, a little too quickly. "Of course," Ego replied, pretending to yawn. "I'm tired too." But she had no intention of sleeping. As soon as Benita went to her room and closed the door, Ego waited. She waited until the house was silent, and then she crept out of her mat and tiptoed down the hallway. She stopped outside Benita's door, her ear pressed against the wood. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then she heard it, a faint, almost unnoticeable rustling. Ego's heart began to race again. Taking a deep breath, she slowly bent down and peered through the keyhole. What she saw made her blood run cold. There was Benita, standing in front of a mirror. Her body was perfectly still, but in her hands, she held her head, calmly brushing through her long hair. She began braiding it with a speed and skill that no normal person could possess. Ego couldn't look away, even though every part of her wanted to run. Suddenly, Benita's body turned toward the door, as if sensing someone was there. Ego quickly pulled back, her heart thudding in her chest. She had almost been caught. She silently tiptoed back to her mat, her mind racing. She now knew for sure. Benita could remove her head and braid her hair. But why? And what did it mean? Ego lay awake the rest of the night, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. She knew that the next step was the hardest one. She had to decide if she would confront her friend, tell the villagers, or keep this secret hidden. Whatever she chose, she knew her life, and perhaps the village, would never be the same again. Suddenly, she heard a creak from Benita's room. Ego's breath caught in her throat. She turned her head slightly and saw Benita's shadow moving down the hallway, her body stiff and mechanical. Ego squeezed her eyes shut, pretending to be asleep, but she couldn't help the slight tremble in her body. The shadow stopped right in front of Ego, standing still for what felt like an eternity. Ego's heart raced. She kept her breathing steady, hoping Benita would think she was sound asleep. Finally, the shadow moved away, and Ego slowly opened one eye. She could see Benita's silhouette moving back toward her room, and she let out a silent sigh of relief. The rest of the night passed slowly. Ego didn't dare move a muscle until she was sure it was morning. As the first rays of sunlight crept through the window, she quickly got up, made an excuse about needing to help her mother, and left Benita's house as fast as she could. She had seen enough. Now she needed to decide what to do next. For days, Ego avoided Benita, pretending to be busy with chores and errands. She couldn't bring herself to face her friend, not after what she had seen. She had nightmares of Benita's headless body chasing her through the village, the head laughing in her hands. She woke up each time drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. The village soon noticed Ego's change in behavior. She wasn't her usual cheerful self, and she seemed to be avoiding Benita. Some of the villagers, curious and suspicious, began to ask her questions. "Is everything all right, Ego?" they would ask. "You and Benita haven't been seen together lately. Did you have a fight?" Ego didn't know how to answer. She wanted to tell them, to warn them about the strange things she had seen, but she was also afraid. What if Benita found out and used her magic to punish her? Benita, noticing the villagers' glances and whispers, grew more distant and withdrawn. She avoided the market and stayed inside her house more often. She knew something was wrong but couldn't put her finger on what had changed. She started to suspect that Ego, her closest friend, might know more than she was letting on. The tension between Ego and Benita finally came to a head one afternoon. Benita, tired of the strange looks and whispers, decided to confront Ego. She found her by the river, collecting water for her mother. "Ego," she called out softly, but there was an edge to her voice that Ego had never heard before. "Why have you been avoiding me?" Ego froze, the water jug trembling in her hands. She turned to face Benita, her heart pounding. I haven't been avoiding you," she stammered, trying to force a smile. "I've just been busy, that's all." Benita stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "No, Ego. Something has changed. I can feel it. I thought we were friends. If there is something you know, you should tell me." Ego's mind raced. She wanted to deny it, to run away, but she could see the intensity in Benita's eyes. She knew that her friend was not someone to be trifled with. I saw something, Benita," Ego whispered, her voice barely audible. "I saw you. I saw you without your head." Benita's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked truly frightened. "Ego, some secrets are better left unknown. For your own sake, I hope you keep this one to yourself." Ego nodded, her body trembling with fear. She had just received a warning, one that she could not afford to ignore. Ego was distraught after her encounter with Benita. She needed someone to talk to, someone she could trust. She decided to confide in her mother, who was wise and knowledgeable about the old ways. That evening, she told her mother everything she had seen and heard. Her mother listened carefully, her face growing pale with each word. "Ego," her mother said finally, her voice trembling with fear, "you should not have meddled in such things. There are stories. Old stories of women who could remove their heads. They made deals with spirits of the forest for beauty or power. But such deals come with a price that is often too high to bear." "What should I do, Mama?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Stay away from her," her mother replied firmly. "Keep your distance. And whatever you do, do not speak of this to anyone else." As the days passed, Benita's behavior became more erratic. She no longer greeted the villagers with her usual warm smile. One night, Ego had a strange dream. She was walking through a dense forest, the trees towering over her like giants. Suddenly, she saw a group of shadowy figures standing in a circle. They seemed to be chanting, their voices low and rhythmic. As she stepped closer, one of the figures turned to her. It was an old woman with deep, knowing eyes. "Beware the magic that binds the hair," the woman said, her voice echoing in Ego's mind. "It comes from a spirit that demands a high price. If the bond is not broken, it will consume her. And you." Ego woke up with a start, her heart racing. She knew then that she could no longer ignore the danger. She had to find a way to protect herself and the village from whatever dark force was at work. The next day, Ego went to see Mama Nkechi, the village's wise woman. Mama Nkechi was known for her knowledge of the old ways and her ability to see into the spirit world. Ego told her everything she had seen and experienced, hoping for some guidance. Mama Nkechi listened carefully, her eyes narrowing. "You have stumbled into something very dangerous, child," she said. "Benita's magic is not her own. It comes from a spirit, a forbidden spirit that grants beauty in exchange for something precious. But such pacts are unstable. The spirit will demand more and more, until there is nothing left to give." Ego's eyes widened with fear. "Is there any way to stop it?" "There is a way," Mama Nkechi said slowly. "But it will require great courage and the help of the village. You must be prepared for what is to come." Mama Nkechi explained that Benita's power came from a spirit of the forbidden forest. Every time Benita removed her head to braid her hair, she was performing a ritual that strengthened her bond with the spirit. However, if the ritual was interrupted, the spirit would grow angry and could cause great harm. Ego knew what she had to do. She had to reveal the truth to the village. It was the only way to save Benita and protect everyone from the spirit's wrath. As days passed, Benita sensed something was wrong. She felt the spirit's power waning and knew that her secret was no longer safe. She sought out Ego, cornering her one evening by the river. "Ego," Benita whispered urgently, "I know you've told someone. You've put us both in danger. I can protect you, but you have to promise to stay quiet." Ego shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Benita, this has to stop. It's too dangerous. The spirit, it's taking over you." Benita's face twisted with fear and anger. "I don't want to lose what I have," she hissed. "You don't understand. I can't go back." "Benita," Ego said, tears in her eyes, "I don't want to lose you as a friend. But this magic, it's destroying you. Please, let's find another way." Benita's eyes softened for a moment. She looked vulnerable, almost like the friend Ego once knew. "I'm scared, Ego," she admitted. "I thought this would make me happy, but now, I don't know." Ego decided to rally the villagers. She knew they needed to come together to confront Benita and the spirit's power. She gathered everyone at the village square and told them everything she knew, including Mama Nkechi's warning. The villagers were frightened but also determined. They knew they had to act before the spirit's influence grew stronger. They prepared protective charms, gathered together in prayer, and planned to confront Benita that night. Benita, sensing the tension in the air, prepared herself. She knew the villagers were coming, and she knew that she had to make a choice: surrender the spirit's power or fight to keep it. That night, the villagers, led by Ego and Mama Nkechi, gathered outside Benita's house. They lit candles and chanted protective prayers. The air was thick with tension as Benita stepped out, her hair flowing like dark flames around her. She looked both frightened and defiant. "Benita," Mama Nkechi called out, "we know about the spirit. It is time to end this. You can still choose to be free." Benita's eyes flashed with anger and desperation. "I don't want to lose my beauty. I don't want to be ordinary again." The villagers continued to chant, their voices growing stronger. Benita raised her hands, and her hair began to move, twisting and writhing like snakes. But the protective charms and chants began to weaken the spirit's hold. Benita fell to her knees, her eyes filled with tears. As the villagers continued their chant, the spirit's power began to break. Benita's hair lost its unnatural luster, falling limp around her face. She cried out as the spirit's presence left her, a gust of wind swirling through the village and disappearing into the night. Benita collapsed, her beauty fading back to a natural, ordinary state. The villagers rushed forward, helping her to her feet. She looked around, her eyes filled with shame and sorrow. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Ego embraced her friend, relief flooding through her. "It's over now, Benita. You're free. What do you think? Should someone bear the spirits just for beauty? Does beauty matters this much? Share your valuable opinion in the comment below, and also subscribe to my channel." Benita left the village soon after, choosing to start a new life far away.